The world has been broken. The shards expose a pattern of pain and devastation. The Holocaust was not the first genocide, and sadly, it was not the last. The Holocaust awoke the world. The documentation, cold, clinical, and often made by the perpetrators themselves, left us with an undeniable record, an archive of atrocity. This story teaches us to gather every precious remnant of our broken world and piece them back together. We are somehow whole and broken at the same time. In recollecting the Holocaust together, we discover glimmers of holiness in the cracks, for it is through these jagged windows that we see the paths to building a better tomorrow. We resolve to follow the strength and courage of those who stood fast for righteousness. Even when enveloped in evil, we will hold on to our faith in humanity. Read this with me. We will emerge strengthened in our resolve, work for a better future.
Candles are at once a symbol of Jewish holy days and a beacon to guide us through the darkness. These mismatched candlesticks remind us that even when we do not have all that we need, we can be a light in the darkness. We take inspiration from those who made do with what they had. We take strength from those who found the strength to stand when standing seemed impossible. We light these candles for the light that shines in the heart of all who fight against evil, for a single candle can both defy and define the darkness.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This light was passed on to me. I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. This light was passed on to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
You're muted.
I apologize. The story of genocide begins with people. Each is an individual with a story, a life that began before the darkness fell. No matter who our ancestors were, we step into these stories as if they were our own. We remember the life before. Not so long ago, many of us lived in the lands of Europe and North Africa. We lived together, side by side, with Christians, Muslims, and others, as neighbors and as friends. We were Jews of many different sorts. We were religious and secular. We lived in cities and in small towns. We lived in many countries across the world. We spoke many different languages. We were doctors and dressmakers, printers and poets, scientists and shopkeepers, weavers and welders.
As a community, we acknowledge our collective refusal to see. An ancient hatred, undisguised, was emerging from the shadows. While Jews faced violence and discrimination in many places, we held to our belief that it was not the case in our homes or among our neighbors. We believed we had grown beyond such ignorance. We did not recognize the approaching danger.
Throughout our time together tonight, we will be hearing short stories from the lives of cousins Minya Storch and Lubas Laudowski, as well as their husbands, Muni Osher and Shulam Kamenar, respectively. We start with Jessica Silverman and the story of Jessica's grandmother, Minya's childhood in Lodz, Poland.
Life in Lodz was wonderful. I lived with my parents, Jacob and Perla, and my two brothers, Kalman and Itzik, and my three sisters, Esther, Chava, and Luba, in an apartment behind a dairy store that we owned and operated. I loved dairy. I loved the cheeses and the milk and the cottage cheese. I would work in the store after school. I loved going to school. I was a good student, and I wanted to be a pharmacist when I grew up and to help people and to wear the white jacket. I came from a religious family, one of 6 kids. My parents named me Mindel, and they gave me the nickname of Mindela and Minya, which means strength. We celebrated all the holidays. Family would come from all over and stay with us and even sleep on our floor. In the summers, I would vacation with my cousins, Luba and Regina, and in the winters, we would go ice skating. September 1939, the Nazis invade Poland. And overnight, the Nazi flags were hanging in Lodz. Soon, there wasn't enough food to go around. There was a bread line, but we weren't allowed to stand in it. But I said to my parents, I'm going to go stand in the line. Let me see if I can find us something to eat. I stood in that bread line overnight in the freezing cold. In the morning, I was still in the bread line when a neighbor who was a Pole recognized me. He called over the SS and he told him that I was a Jew. The SS came over to me, slapped me across the face, and pulled me out of line. By April 1940, the Nazis had taken a section of Lodz, separated us from the outside world, and turned it into a ghetto. My mom said, now, this is a time of war. We don't have to keep kosher. After the war, we'll go back to keeping kosher. That we all must do whatever we can to survive. We had to close the business. The little food that we had, that was all that we had to eat. There were deportations. One time, my mom hid me in the bed and made the bed with me in the bed. But then she heard that the Nazis were coming around with their knives and stabbing the mattresses, so we couldn't hide there anymore. Another time at a deportation, we hid behind a credenza, but soon we couldn't do that as well. We had to take the furniture and burn it. There wasn't enough coal to go around, and we were so cold. I was forced to go work in a factory. My job was to take straw and weave it together and make boot coverings for the SS soldiers' boots. I would wake up extra early so that I could get to the factory and pick the straw that was a little bit softer on my teenage fingertips. At the end of the day, I was given a cup of soup. It is all the food I had all day. One day, the SS took a group of us to the cemetery and forced us to dig. Digging and digging. Then the SS shouted, "Men, line up!" Then they shot them. We women had to bury them. Life in the Lodz ghetto was unbearable. There was death, starvation, and disease everywhere. My mom, Perla, and my older brother, Kalman, both died in the ghetto. I would go and sit on my mom's grave. Mommy, I miss you. You were my everything.
The path to genocide is neither swift nor straight. Time after time, the path to genocide has been a slow-burning fuse of degrading language and subtle discrimination. When we ignore the slowly rising shadows of hatred, those shadows can engulf us. We are all born with a desire to love, not a desire to hate. Without a watchful eye, we can slide into ancient prejudice.
We remember and speak as the Jews of Germany might have. Hatred spread across Germany like poison in water. The Germans afflicted us with cruel laws and humiliations. They did not care who we were or what we did. They did not care whether we were religious or secular, from the city or the country, civilian or soldier, only that we were Jews. Trouble does not begin with fanfare, but as storm clouds building in the distance. Every day, they keep issuing new laws against Jews. Today, for example, they took all of our appliances away from us: the sewing machine, the radio, the telephone, the vacuum cleaner, the electric fryer, my camera, my bicycle. Aggie said we should be happy they're taking things and not people. Eva Heyman, Holocaust victim, Romania.
In addition to reading aloud with us, tonight you are going to get to participate in our discussions. We call these moment of witness questions. We move out of what is written before us, where we give voice to the words on the page. We move into our own hearts and into our own minds. I invite you to take a moment to see yourself as a witness. If you want, you may close your eyes and go into a quiet place as I ask you this question. Have you experienced hate or persecution? Share a story with us. Consider this for a moment, and then, if you wish, you may write down the answers in the chat. Lynn said, at university, I was told I would fail class because the Zionists don't have a place here. Thank you, Lynn.
So please continue to write your thoughts in the chat, and we will continue with our ceremony, but we'll read some of these as we move forward.
We remember. Many of us fled. Many more tried to flee, but found there was no place to go. Some who thought we had found safe haven were sent back into danger. The Germans crowded us into small ghettos, cut off from the outside world. There was never enough food. Death was a daily visitor.
For 7 weeks, I've lived in here, penned up inside this ghetto. But I have found my people here. The dandelions call to me, and the white chestnut candles in the court. Only I never saw another butterfly, the very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears could sing against a white stone, that butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here.
Hate is unashamed. It can present itself in its full, raw fury. Yet it can also present itself in flowery words and with broad smiles. It can cloak itself in flags and sing of better days gone by. While it distracts our attention with pretty squabbles, its poison saps the vigor of society. As a community, we acknowledge when our neighbors began to disappear from our communities, it was not done in the dark. We knew that terrible things were happening to them. Most of us chose silence to look away and to ignore the hate. We waited. We waited to see when the cruelty would end. We waited for the hate to pass. We waited too long. When we hide from the truth of what we are witnessing, we allow hatred to grow and violence to spread.
We remember both the hope and the fear. Holding on to the hope that we might one day be reunited, we sent our children into hiding. A few were sent to safety beyond the German borders. Others found hiding places with friends, neighbors, and strangers. As we send our young children away alone, our grief for the separation overlaid our prayers for their survival. As Mummy and Umi waved to me, I chose to hide my tears. I smiled. I wanted to give them my strength. Dr. Ruth Westerheimer, survivor, Germany.
We, the descendants of both bystanders and victims, remember how families were separated in hope of survival. We weep for them. Where did they find such hope? Read this next with me. Hope and faith may seem frail comfort, but they are steel girders that give us strength to stand.
Please find a piece of paper, any scrap will do, and a pencil. Write on the paper a hope for the future, a personal hope, or a hope for your community. This is my paper. These notes represent our hopes for ourselves and our children, represent our faith in the future. Let these hopes be sweetness that lies beneath the bitterness. As we all did in the time of trouble, we now conceal our hope in a secret place to keep it safe. May we find it again at the end of our journey.
Words fail as we speak of the darkest times. We remember a mixed multitude were caught in the Nazis' web of death. Jews, Romani, gay people, people with disabilities, voices of resistance. Many of us died at the Nazis' hands. A special viciousness was aimed at the Jews and the Romani, two cultures the Germans were determined to eradicate.
We remember the Germans murdered us Jews in staggering numbers. In many places, bystanders became willing participants in the violence. We were murdered without mercy, mothers and fathers, children and grandparents. We were murdered simply for being Jews.
We remember the Germans, we remember for generations. The Romani have wandered free throughout Europe, yet we were distrusted and shunned. Strong families helped us endure until the terror of the devouring. The Germans murdered us alongside the Jews simply for being who we are. Mass graves filled the forests of Europe.
We remember the Germans tore us from our homes, forcing us into slave labor camps and into death chambers. Those who could not work were murdered. Those who could work were kept as slaves until they too succumbed to starvation and illness. In our blind ignorance, we thought that deportation was a better solution. Fools that we were, we thought that the ghetto was the ultimate in abysmal blackness. We did not know that from here on, we would be severed and cut off from everything that was familiar and dear to us. We did not know that from that train ride on, we would be robbed of our whole world. Sarah Selver, Holocaust survivor, Poland.
We return to our stories with Lynn Feldman telling the story of Shulam Kamenar in Auschwitz.
I arrived in Auschwitz with a $20 gold coin. But they took everything away from us. So, in the changing room, before the showers, I put the gold coin in my mouth, first in my cheek, then under my tongue, because you see, they checked our mouths as well. Then they tried to take our names away. We were tattooed with numbers. 3138, that was my number. They tried to call us by the numbers, but I'm not a number. I'm Shulam Kamenar. That's how I walked out, and that's how I walked in. I was thinking that I will use my gold coin traded in the black market in Auschwitz. But somebody must have told. Somebody must have told because one day, one of the capos caught me, dragged me into the barracks, stripped me completely naked, and started beating me. Where's your gold? Where is your gold? I don't have any gold, I kept saying. And he beat me till I was black and blue all over. And I just kept saying I didn't have the gold. The capo threw me out of the barracks. I landed on 2 corpses. I was so tired, all I wanted to do was to close my eyes. I fell asleep. The following morning, the capo and 2 others came, picked me up, and dragged me to one of the officers' offices. In the middle of the room, there was a wooden stool. They made me kneel on that stool, and both men were holding me down. And the officer beat my back. Jew, where's your gold? I don't have any gold. Beat me again. Jew, where is your gold? And the only thing I could do was push those 2 men, push them so hard that they both reached the walls on opposite sides. The officer had enough of this. Throw out the filthy Jew. Afterwards, things calmed down. One of the foremen came up to me one day and said, "Tell me, really, where's your gold? If I had gold, do you think I would be beaten twice that hard? I don't have any gold." The foreman said to me, "You Jews, you think you're so strong," and walked away. A few days later, we were told we were going to be leaving Auschwitz. In the middle of the night, I snuck out of my barrack. And between my barrack and the 3 barracks surrounding, I knelt down on the ground and dug up my $20 gold coin.
In their mission to obliterate civilizations, the Germans wiped away whole communities, not only their present, but also their history and their future. The sudden silence, this multi-generational emptiness, takes our breath away. These communities had existed since the time when Jews were enslaved by the Romans. They were refugees from the Inquisition. They endured the Crusades and survived the pogroms, but they are no more. At this point, if you have a yahrzeit candle, pull it out now. I have one. The candles that I use come from an organization called R6 Million. I don't actually know if it still exists, but they each have the name of someone who was murdered or died in the Holocaust. This one says Eliyahu Davidovich, from Carpathian Ruthenia, Czechoslovakia. He was a merchant. He was murdered in Auschwitz, Poland in 1944. So if you have a candle, light it with me now.
Join us in a responsive reading. That means you should read the sections in italics. A millennium of wisdom erased, and a whole generation emptied of artists and writers, of scholars and teachers, an entire library of poems unwritten, music unimagined, knowledge unexplored.
We mourn the centers of learning, Vilna, Vienna, Prague.
2,000 years of civilization wiped away, and a whole generation silenced of love and laughter, of charity and celebration. An entire society of families unborn, stories untold, synagogues unbuilt.
We mourn the centers of life, Sarajevo, Salonika, Chelm, Warsaw.
A legacy of industry and craft extinguished, a whole generation bereft of artisans and builders, of experts and leaders, an entire economy of things unmade, science undiscovered, medicine unpracticed.
We mourn the centers of progress, Kiev, Kilche, Frankfurt.
There are so many more, hundreds of cultures, thousands of communities, millions of people, all silenced. Let these lights shine as a symbol of life and love remembered. May they illuminate our memory and guide our future.
Light one candle for the Maccabee children, with thanks that their light didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. Light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our hope and our tears. What is the memory that's valued so highly? We keep it alive in that flame. What's the commitment to those who have died, that we cry out they've not died in vain? We come this far, always believing that justice would somehow prevail. This is the burden, and this is the promise, and this is why we must not fail. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our hope and our tears.
From darkness into light, we pause in terror before the human deed, the cloud of annihilation, the concentration of death, the cruelly casual way of each to each. But in the stillness of this hour, we find our way from darkness into light. Chaim Stern.
How do we stay hopeful when people are capable of such great evil? Some good people recognized the evil for what it was. A few were willing to risk their lives to help. They hid friends, neighbors, and strangers from the eyes of those bent on harm. In almost every survivor's story, there is a story of someone who helped. These people are our ancestors too.
We know rescuers lived in every country in Europe. We came from every walk of life. Some saved hundreds, some saved one. We did all we could to save as many as we could, regretting only that we could not do more.
In some places, whole communities stood together to protect Jews. For the mostly Muslim population of Albania, helping Jews was a matter of national honor. When the Germans invaded Albania, Nero Hoxha, a teacher and a religious Muslim, hid 4 Jewish families in underground bunkers in his house. Now we are one family, he told them. My sons and I will defend you against peril at the cost of our lives. Nero Hoxha, Holocaust rescuer, Albania.
We return to our stories. Lynn will tell us of Luba Kamener, née Slavdowski, and her experience in Auschwitz.
I arrived in Auschwitz with my mother, Bina, and my sister, Regina. But we didn't go through the same intake as everybody else. Our hair wasn't shaved off. We weren't tattooed. You see, my sister, Regina, in Lodz in the ghetto, she worked with the phone companies, and she was promised a job together with her family at the Sims factory. So when we were already in Auschwitz, we were put aside for a while in barracks to wait so that we could go for her to work on more phone company things. I got a bit bored. The days went by, we did nothing. So I found a little job. I translated for one of the girls that worked in the kitchen. She had a boyfriend on the outside, but she couldn't write in Polish. So I would translate her letters and write for her in Polish. Sometimes she would give me an extra piece of bread, sometimes a bit more marge. One day she was wearing a jacket she made from blankets. I said to her, I want a jacket like that. So I did some more work for her and she gave me a jacket. And then I said, but I want another one. So my mother and sister could share it. I did some more work and I got another one. In Auschwitz, we had to go and be purified and deliced at least once a month. But I knew that if I went to the showers, I'd have to give up my jacket. I didn't want to give up my jacket. So I didn't go to the showers. I hid behind the barracks. And while I was behind the barracks, this Czech capo woman walks by and she says, "Hey, what you doing there?" "Oh, me? I'm waiting for my brother. He works in Canada. He's supposed to bring me something." "Are you lying?" "You better not be lying. If you are, I'll kill you." "No, no, no, no. My brother will bring me something from Canada." And the couple walks off, and as she walks off, on the other side of the electric wires, there's there is somebody. There are four men walking by, holding a blanket. They stop right in front of me. And one of them yells out, "Hey, do you need shoes?" Yes, yes, I do need shoes. So they open the blanket and one of them picks out a pair of shoes and tries to shove them underneath the electric wires. But they got stuck. I didn't want to touch them. There's electricity running through those wires. So he pulls them out again and he manages somehow to shove them through. And they were beautiful. They had buckles and laces. They were leather. The following day, I walked by that capo and I said, see what my brother gave me?"
Let us once again move off the page and into our own hearts and our own minds. Who has helped you? Help Help can come be as simple as meeting with empathy. Consider this for a moment, and then, if you wish, write your answers in the chat.
Thank you. Let us, thank you, Jessica. We appreciate that. Let us continue, but please continue to write in the chat. We, the descendants of bystanders, rescuers, and survivors, honor the helpers so that we may gain wisdom from them. We must always strive for the courage to help those in need. Each person's decision to help was difficult. The risks were many. Would we have made such a decision? We cannot know. We cannot judge. In gratitude and hope, we honor the helpers. We draw inspiration from them and vow never to be indifferent to the plight of others. Read this with me. Strength comes to those who pursue justice.
Claudia, you're on.
Okay. An army arrayed to eliminate the future, but they could not erase the memory of an entire culture. Bodies could be destroyed, but the Jewish spirit could not be defeated. We remember Despite our enemies' eagerness to strip us of our Judaism and our humanity, we continue to educate our children, to celebrate our holidays, to love and help each other. Although prayer was forbidden, we prayed in secret communities and within the secret places in our hearts. Our faith was the one thing they could not take from us. Rivka Wagner, Holocaust survivor, Poland. Hidden between the bunks, we whispered the familiar words of the Sabbath prayers and found tranquility. I discovered for the first time in my life the real power and value of prayer and faith in God. I could feel my words shattering the iron gates and the high-powered fences, going past the hundreds of guards, dugouts, and watchtowers, out into the open, reaching towards heaven. Here, I knew, was a way of escape, a source of strength, and a means of survival of which no power on earth could deprive me. Simcha Unsdorfer, Holocaust survivor, Czechoslovakia. In the ghetto, a young boy defied the bitterness.
From tomorrow on, I shall be sad. From tomorrow on. Today, I will be happy. What's the use of sadness? Tell me that. Because the evil winds begin to blow? Why should I grieve for tomorrow? Today? No, today I will be glad. And every day, no matter how bitter it be, I will say, from tomorrow on, I shall be sad. Not today. Morale, a child in the ghetto, excerpted.
Returning to our stories, we return once again to Jessica and Minya.
November 1944. I'm being transported from Auschwitz with my cousins, Luba and Regina. We're sent to many different camps. The Kurzbach, Grossrosen, Buchenwald. January 1945. I'm on a death march with my cousins. We're marching for days and nights with nothing to eat or drink. There's snow all around us, but we're not allowed to eat it. The SS will kill us. We're marching and marching. I don't have any shoes or socks on. I rip the bottom of my dress and I take a piece of cloth and I tie it around my bare feet. For miles and miles, we march. People are dying left and right. We hold on to each other and we help each other. One night, we stop at a little farm and there's a barn. The SS said that we can sleep inside. But hours later, we still couldn't sleep. We were so hungry. So I said to my cousins, stay here. I'm going to look and see if I can find us something to eat. I left the barn, and nearby, there was a small house. I opened up the door, and inside, the SS were sleeping. The rifles were up against the wall, and their knapsacks. I quickly stole a knapsack. I ran back to the barn. I said to my cousins, hurry, come meet me out back in the latrine. There, we opened up the knapsack, and inside, there was beer, liverwurst, and chocolate. We ate it all. But what to do with the knapsack? I said to my cousins, don't worry about it. I'll bury it under the straw in the barn. They'll never find it. That night, we slept. The next morning, the SS shout, Achtung! Stand at attention! The SS with his pistol, shooting it up in the air, wanting to know, Who took my knapsack? Who took my knapsack? For hours, he screamed at us. We didn't say a word. Finally, the other SS said, "Come on, let's go. We have to continue the march." We marched from Buchenwald into Bergen-Belsen. I'm sick with typhus. I have a fever. I have lice all over me. I'm emaciated. I'm naked. I have nothing. My cousins are sick as well. They're laying down in a nearby barrack. There's mountains of dead bodies everywhere. The crematorium is broken. Nobody should see what I've seen in my life. A day in Bergen-Belsen feels like a year. It's April 15th, 1945, and there are tanks coming over the barbed wire fences and men parachuting in. What is happening? Who are these people? A tank stops nearby me and a young man in military uniform gets out. He comes over to me. He takes off his jacket and he puts it on me. I fall to the ground. The jacket's too heavy for me. I'm skin and bones. I give him my hand and he helps me up. And I start talking to him, but he doesn't understand me and I don't understand him. So I take his hand and I walk him over to the barracks to where my cousins are. And I say, "Luba, Regina, you have to come out. You have to see what's happening here."
Minya, can't you see? Regina and I are dying here.
I said, "Come out now. Die later. We're being liberated."
Liberation did come. As the armies of the world moved toward vanquishing evil, they discovered a hell that left them stunned. We remember. As we survivors emerged from that hell, we asked, how do we move forward when we have lost so much? We walk with a hole in our hearts and weight in our footsteps, but we walk forward. We are reduced, but we refuse to remain broken. While the world counted their dead, we counted our living. Those who live gave us the strength to love again. We did not know what would come next. We only knew we could not go back to the life we once lived.
As a community, we acknowledge. As we watched our neighbors struggle to regain their footing, we found our own footing, not quite so steady, for we remembered what we had been taught. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Matthew 25:40. We wish we had done more. We know that we must reach out to all souls in need. Read with me. Only by loving our neighbors with all our hearts can we heal the terrible hurt that has been done to the world. Let us strive to be the light in the world, as it is written, love the whole world as a mother loves her only child. Paraphrase from the Buddhist Karanya Metta Sutta. Lift your hands with me together and open them out, palms up. We take their sorrow into our hands to cleanse, to heal, to protect. We reveal our palms to express our hope, for hands are our extension of the heart. Please read with me. Words are not enough. It takes our hands to build.
Our hope for the future is tempered by our tears for the past. We drown in the enormity of our emptiness, lost in the ocean of the absence of those lost. Most of what remains is memory. We cling to this memory as we acknowledge that they lived. Read with me. As long as we remember them, they are with us.
The survivors entreat us. I ask you not to forget the dead. I ask you to build a memorial in our names, a monument reaching up to the heavens that the entire world might see. Not a monument of marble or stone, but one of good deeds. I believe with full and perfect faith that only such a monument can promise a better future. Only thus can we be sure that the evil that overturned the world and turned our lives into hell will never return. Adapted from Danya Rosen, Holocaust survivor, Ukraine.
Let us remember them as they lived. As we contemplate their pictures, we mourn the stories cut short, the hopes and dreams lost. We speak their names so they will not be forgotten. Some people in these photos are not labeled with names, reminding us that although some stories are lost, we still acknowledge the people who lived them. For these, we simply say, unknown. Let these few represent for us the many. If you know someone who was murdered in the Holocaust or another genocide or hate crime, bring their name to mind now. If you want, put it in the chat and we will read it after we read these names. These are pictures of people who were murdered in the Holocaust. Please read their names with us.
Giese Fleischman,
Rudi Salmon,
unknown.
Zipporah Pecker,
Shraga Picker,
Stella Steinbach,
Yehiel Mintzberg,
Henry Zorek,
Isabel Martin.
Zolly Martin.
Let us pause for a moment of silent reflection. Have we lost? There we go.
If we only have love to embrace without fears, we will kiss with our eyes, we will sleep without tears. If we only have love with our arms open wide, then the young and the old will stand at our side. If we only have love, love that's falling like rain, then the parched desert earth will grow green again. If we only have love for the hymn that we shout, for the song that we sing, then we'll have a way out. Then with nothing at all but the little we are, we'll have conquered all time, all space, the sun and the stars.
So we have some names in the chat I'm going to read. Sonia Nicker, Emmanuel Nicker, Dasha Nicker, Ida Starkman, Joseph Starkman, Miriam Starkman, Magdalena Dushika Altman, Ruth Kuznitsky, stepmother of my mom who bravely placed her on a kinder transport train, Beryl and Rosa Walter, Fritz Weiler, Ella Weiler, Clara Kaufman, Matilda Fodor. Esther and Chaim Spirka, Lieb Zlatogorsky, Freda and Rachel Spirka, and 50 members of Roberta's father's family and most of the Jewish community of Wilczynska, Poland. Thank you for sharing those names.
We remember not only the unaccountable Jewish and Romani dead, but also the many who were murdered alongside them. Gay people, people with disabilities, and voices of resistance, all murdered in the great silencing of diversity, speech, and opposition. They are gone. They cannot tell their stories any longer. But we can. We can hold open the window, this fragile window. We can give their stories wings. Let us give their stories a voice so they can fly into others' ears, into others' hearts. Please read with me. Only we can tell their stories now. Only we. By Jennifer Zinikoff.
In the aftermath of this horror, we awaken to a world where human beings have done unfathomable evil to each other. What do we do now?
Bereft, we weep. How do we mourn so many lost, so many murdered?
We recall each history, each name, each life. We remember how they were caught one by one in the web of hate. We remember their strength, how they held on to love and life and hope, even in the harshest times. Their stories teach us that the thread of life is strong. As survivors say, grandchildren are the best revenge.
Overwhelmed, we whisper, I do not want to hear anymore.
We draw inward to comfort one another. We remember that even as we grieve, we grow. Even as we hurt, we hope. Even as we tire, we try. We know that ignoring evil only allows it to grow. Despite our unease, we choose not to be blind. We choose awareness because we recognize that evil does not need our help, just our indifference.
Angered, we cry out, how could this happen? Where was the world?
We remember not only the evil of those bent on harm, but also the goodness of those few determined to help. We resolve to turn our anger into a passionate drive to make the world a better place for everyone.
Awakened, we inquire, how does such hatred grow? How can we stop it?
Hatred grows when we ignore it, when we allow hurtful behavior to go unchallenged. We will not let evil hide in the shadows. We resolve to shine a spotlight on hate and make it clear that such behavior is not acceptable. We will be vocal torchbearers of love.
We conclude the stories of Minya, Muni, Luba, and Shulam in a DP camp in Germany after the war with both of our storytellers.
When I arrived in Auschwitz in July of 1944 from my hometown, Kielce, Poland, I had walked in Muni Usharovitz, 25-year-old son to Odessa and Yosef Usharovitz, big brother to Aaron. I had walked in Muni Usharovitz, but they tattooed on my arm the number B3379. That was my new name. When I had arrived at Auschwitz on that hot July day, I was wearing a suit, and there was a diamond that was sewn to the inside of that suit jacket pocket. When they took away my suit, I was able to save that diamond and put it in my belt buckle. And for many months at Auschwitz, I held on to that diamond in my belt buckle. But eventually, the belt was taken away, but I was still able to hold on to that diamond. I held on to it, but starving and emaciated, I went over to a capo, a Jewish guard, and I offered him the diamond for a piece of bread. The capo could have taken the diamond, punched me, walked away, and not given me anything. But he didn't. He gave me a piece of bread for that diamond. And that helped me live another day. From Auschwitz, I was transported to many different camps. Towards the end of the war, I was in Dachau, laying on the dirt ground, emaciated, weighing 30 kilos, when 2 SS soldiers came by me, and one of them with his pistol was about to shoot me. And the other one said to him, "Don't bother! Don't waste a bullet! He's dead already!" I was finally liberated from Dachau by the Americans, and here I am now in a DP camp in Munich, Germany, after the war.
After liberation, my sister Regina and I, we were so sick. We had to go to a hospital to convalesce. Minya went to a DP camp. But we know everything that's happening there. Minya sends us letters. She starts every letter with, "Dear Regina and Luba."
We were liberated by the British, and here I am in a DP camp in Munich, Germany after the war, searching to see if anyone we know has survived the war. No one. Tonight, there's a social gathering at the camp. I walk in, and my eyes catch his, and his eyes catch mine. He's tall and handsome. I go over to him, and I introduce myself. I say, "Hi, I'm Minya." And he says, "Hi, I'm Uni." And we sit down and talk.
We got the best letter from Minya. She's getting married. So Regina and I, we pack our things and we're going to the DP camp. Regina, she's still not very well, but I'm okay. When we get to the DP camp, I realize that Minya doesn't have a wedding dress. So I go knocking on every door to find the perfect dress for her.
It's April 6, 1946. I'm standing under the chuppah. I'm looking in Muni's eyes, and he's looking in mine. Ani v'dodi l'dodi li. I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. An American general is throwing us a wedding. We invited everyone in the camp. My cousin Luba had gone door to door to find me a wedding dress, a beautiful dress that I wore, that then I passed down to her, that then she wore, then was passed down to other survivors as well.
One of the best things about coming to the DP camp for Minya's wedding is I got introduced to the groom, Muni, to his best friend from kilts, Shulam. Very handsome. He was a boxer. You know, he even boxed in Auschwitz. We got married after a while. And more than a year later, we had our first baby boy. And we decided to stay here in Germany for a while.
February 20th, 1947. I'm in the hospital. I've just given birth to my first child, a daughter that I named Perla after my mom. I love you. What I lost, I found in my daughter. This was my everything, my husband and my daughter. Muni and I decided it was time to leave Europe. We packed up our belongings which included a beautiful silver candelabra. And we embarked on the journey to cross the Atlantic and start our new lives in New York City.
We can all learn lessons from the Holocaust, from the victims, from the bystanders, from the rescuers, and even from the perpetrators.
We recognize the children of the perpetrators. Nothing we can do can atone for what our parents did. We cannot change this past. It haunts us. It stains our lives. But we must not forget our inheritance of shame. We do not celebrate our parents' deeds. We pore over the broken shards of a world they shattered. We hold that legacy as a beacon, a lighthouse, to warn of the perils of ancient xenophobia and prejudice. For tragically, pieces of this story have been repeated all too often.
Despite our earnest efforts, people are still persecuted for who they are. Anger and hatred, nurtured by prejudice, continue to take root in our communities. We, each one of us, a descendant of the Holocaust, proclaim, there is still hope. We each can make a difference.
Find the hidden paper where you wrote your hope. Bring it back out. Read it to yourself. These notes represented our hopes for ourselves and our children. When we stand with hope, we brace ourselves with determination. But hope is not enough. We seek to turn that hope into a leap of action and bring us into the light. On the back of the paper, write one positive step you can take to make that hope or any other a reality. If you would like, put your hope or action in the chat.
While people are deciding whether they want to put things in the chat, we have concluded the stories of our two couples. But let's hear from one of our storytellers one more time as Jessica reflects on telling her family story.
On the evening of Rosh Hashanah, just a few months ago, I lit the candles on my grandmother's candelabra, the same one that she brought from Europe all those years ago. This year, however, my grandmother was not with us, having passed away a year ago. In her absence, the torch has been passed to me, and with it, the responsibility to honor her memory and continue telling her story. In July of 2019, when I began researching and writing my grandmother's biography, I spent countless hours sifting through archives, watching her Shoah Foundation interview, listening to her personal stories, making calls, and researching online to gather as much information as possible. By 2020, the book was finished, and my grandmother was incredibly proud. She carried it with her everywhere, sharing it with everyone she met. My grandmother once spoke at schools and universities, sharing her remarkable journey with students. Since her passing, I have taken up that mantle, continuing her work and carrying her legacy forward. In telling her story, I am constantly reminded of her unyielding will to live, her strength in the face of adversity, and her enduring belief that tomorrow could be a better day. She always said, "Where there is life, there is hope." The positive feedback and my storytelling's impact on others motivate me to keep sharing my grandparents' stories. It is a powerful reminder that our collective memory must be preserved, especially of such a dark chapter in history. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Teach to Shoah for inviting me to participate in this evening's program commemorating the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. It is truly an honor to have my family's story featured in such a meaningful event. Hearing Lynn share the story of my grandma's cousin Luba and her husband Shulam, alongside my opportunity to recount parts of my grandparents' Minnie and Muni's stories, was profoundly moving. Collaborating with Lynn has been an incredible experience, and the special friendship we have built through this journey is a true gift. I am proud to carry this responsibility, and together we can ensure that the memory of those who lived through these experiences endures and that future generations will never forget.
Through the windows of our broken history, we have seen bits of ourselves in all these stories, in the victims and in the bystanders, in the perpetrators and in the rescuers. As we recall the Holocaust, we resolve to follow the strength and courage of those who stood fast for righteousness. We resolve to learn the lessons of the Holocaust so that no people shall ever suffer such a fate again. We say, never again.
Join us in respective reading. That means you should read the section in italic. Never again shall we ignore the gathering shadows of hate.
Never again.
Never again shall we stay silent at the preaching of malice.
Never.
Again.
Never again shall we excuse those who hate.
Never again.
As long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. Nelson Mandela. Never again shall we stand and watch while people are mistreated.
Never again.
Never again shall we allow groups of people to be separated and made unequal.
Never again.
Never again shall we watch a community plant the seeds of hate and do nothing.
Never again.
Sorry. There you go.
If your eyes be turned towards justice, choose for your neighbor that which you choose for yourself. Never again shall we think we are helpless to stop the coming of evil.
Never again.
Never again shall we forget our own strength.
Never again.
Never again shall we allow hatred to go unanswered.
Never again. I raise up my voice, not so I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. Malala Yousafzai. Let us raise our voices for those who cannot. As it is written, justice, justice, you shall pursue.
Never again will we turn our faces from the cry for help.
The need is here, the need is now.
Read this with me. Justice, justice, we shall pursue. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our readers and storytellers, Jessica Silverman, Lynn Feldman, Claudia Andorsky, and Greg F. Time. Thank you to Cantor Karen Weber for her wonderful music. And thank you too to two folks who are not here, my co-author, Violet Neff Helms, and our silent co-partner, Michael Fripp. Our God and God of our ancestors, God of our fathers and our mothers, of our living and our dead, hold all of these people in your hand. Keep us safe and help us to find the sacred wells of justice that dwell within each of us. Help us to create a just world for all people in all places.
When you walk through a storm, hold your chin up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
Thank you and good night.